Welcome to the Nth Degree, where we talk about the latest trends, technologies, and innovations happening in the health and media spaces. I'm Amanda Prito, and I am happy to welcome back Julie Hurwitz Aliaga and Josh Simon, leads within CMI Media Group's Centered division. So today we're going to dive into one of the most dynamic, high potential, but highly regulated spaces in advertising, influencer marketing in the pharma industry. Let's explore why and how brands should be utilizing this space. So let's dive right in. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Amanda.
All right, great to have you. Can you just level set our audience on what Centered is, why it exists, and that specific focus on influencer marketing?
Yep, definitely. So we created Centered a couple years ago to align with some of the more outside of the box social and content workflows that don't typically fall within a media organization. And they don't always belong with a creative AOR either. So there was this opportunity for us to create a division with my media group that really focused on the content, the strategy, and then the social influencer workflow. And this shift was an opportunity for us to offer our clients easy to achieve and cost effective options for optimizations in this space. And it also led to clients spending significantly less, sometimes up to 30% less, for example, for HCP influencer engagements and patient stories due to being more closely aligned to media. So we really saw this as a greater efficiency for our clients and the future of where this is all headed and closely aligned to our media organization.
Amazing. Thank you. All right, Josh. Hi, let's move over to you. So, specific to influencer marketing in the pharma industry, as Julie just teed us up, what are you seeing as some unique aspects?
Yeah, so I think unique aspect wise, from a farmer perspective, obviously we're dealing with branded advertising, which comes with a whole slew of things like safety information and that type of thing. So you really have to look at it a lot differently. So things like the big reach influencers might not be as effective. So we're really looking for authenticity and storytelling as really the main focus when we're looking for influencers. So when you're identifying influencers, that really should be your core goal of finding someone who can really tell a great story and be compelling because we know that content might not perform well organically. And that's why it really needs to be aligned to media because we're really going to be able to boost it up, get it into the right campaigns, get it to the right targeting, get into the right hands. So if you have someone who can tell a great story, that is going to perform all that much better from a media standpoint.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's about the who, but also about what they bring and how they support the brand, right? So let's stay with you, Josh. And what are you seeing in terms of how social platforms are supporting influencer efforts?
Yeah, I think it's been a big effort over the last couple of years. We know a lot of these platforms are now built on having content from creators and influencers to keep people in channel and engaged. So they are adding a lot of different functionality and even in the pharma space, ensuring parity between the features that they have from an advertising perspective to help pharma also being there to help with the influencer piece as well. So it's definitely been also a focus as we've seen with a lot of the events from the platforms like Meta, TikTok, and even LinkedIn, highlighting creators, even connecting you with creators at those events. So it's obviously really front and center. And those platforms also want brands to be doing more influencer and creator content because they know it performs well. They want your media to perform well. And they know that if you increase your partnerships with these types of creators, then you'll see better performance on their channels as well.
Yeah, awesome. Very interesting and makes sense. So, Julie, we know we are in a very unique and intentionally regulated, meaningful space, but we know that influencer spend has doubled since 2020. And I'd love for you to talk about maybe why we haven't yet seen that scale across our space.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when we look back at 2020, 2021, it was an interesting time for the influencer space in general. There were a lot of hiccups, I will say, that were made back then. Josh and I talk about one in particular often, which I will not name by names. But back then, you did have a lot of these celebrities getting into the influencer space, right? And with that, not always understanding the nuances and the regulations that go with pharma and healthcare. So, what we were seeing was FDA letters that were going out at that time to these celebrities, to the pharmaceutical brands, and it wasn't a great look. I think what we know now is that these programs are evolving and they need to be run by teams that understand the nuances of our industry. So we are seeing that shift after some of those hiccups early on with potentially going to teams that did not understand a lot of these nuances, a shift towards more education. So fast forward to where we are today, I think we are getting somewhere. I think we are at a place now where, to Josh's point earlier, the platforms are understanding the opportunities for patients, for HCPs, for education, and that knowledge gap is closing. And we are seeing that these programs now are some of the most successful ones within our media campaigns, sometimes at a 2.7x ad recall lift and a 71% high intent brand lift when compared to branded non influencer assets. So I think time is telling the story for us. And then also understanding who you go to make sure that these programs are run in a compliant way. We're also seeing that there's a 23% savings in content creation costs for brands using and repurposing their influencer content and ads. And that is huge as well. You're saving on those big production days, you're saving on a lot of the asset creation that we used to have to see in the past with some of these ambassador programs, let's call them. So all of these pieces are reasons for continuing to educate on the positives, to your point, how influencers can be leveraged in a compliant and safe way, and really just continuing to prove out why we also need to tie it closer to our media programs and investments.
Okay, so why do we think that creator aligned media is the best approach? And do you have any good examples you can share?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I mentioned this earlier off, but the creator aligned media is performing. We are seeing that in the case studies, and I know Josh has a great one to share in a few minutes, but we are closely aligned to those financials and media dollars. So our teams are able to come back to us and say, hey, this is where we're seeing a gap. We are seeing maybe a little bit of a slow uptick in performance. Why don't we think about really blowing out an influencer opportunity that will resonate because it's really meaningful. It's really going to resonate with this community. And we're not seeing that potentially from the creative that we have in market right now. So, again, these are opportunities for us to have these conversations that we are already having all day, every day with our engagement strategy team, our media team, and then quickly be able to action on it. And like I said, Josh has had immense success in this area. So I'm really going to throw it over to him to share one of his case studies. But we're only seeing this trend continue.
Once you add a couple minute ISI to a piece of content, typically it does not perform well organically. So obviously bringing it close to media is the best move, but we also can foresee the other opportunities. So can we put this influencer content into other channels, even programmatic? There's even like CTV extensions that you could consider. There's really a bunch of opportunities if you tie it closely to media, but you need to contract it that way up front to leave flexibility. So sometimes when you do that contracting before looping in media, you're going to miss out on opportunities or you're going to have to recontract and renegotiate. From a case study perspective, I think it really comes to light with a more recent case study that we did with actually an HCP influencer that we were able to extend the content not only across Meta, but also across LinkedIn. So we were able to launch this from a LinkedIn thought leader ad, which is their influencer content offering, but also roll it into the brand campaign. So things like that, where there's different options and headlines and CTA buttons and those types of things, depending on what ad unit you use. So that's really going to take a lot of orchestration on our end to make sure that we're leveraging the right ones. And by doing that, we're going to see better results. So in this campaign, we saw up to 9% less cost per click. And I think it was like 15% higher click through rate by making sure it was tied closely to media. So not only was this content performing well just because it was very engaging, but ensuring it was placed into the right ad units and those types of things, we saw even greater performance. So that's not only like proof in the pudding that we saw great results from influencer, but by tying it closely to media, we can see even better results.
Yeah, makes total sense. Thank you. Okay, so it seems like everyone has a creator offering these days. What are a couple of top things that pharma brands should be looking for, and how should, organizations be shifting their mindset?
There are so many great agencies out there and so many great partners out there that one can leverage. So I really do feel for brand marketers right now because it is a little bit confusing of who you go to, right? So I think the best advice that we would give is first and foremost, make sure that whomever you're partnering with fully understands the regulatory impacts that these programs have. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing, to Josh's point earlier, it is shifting more closely to media. We are seeing more and more ways to extend your media programs into media opportunities. Even with our own teams, our innovation team right now is very closely tied to Josh and his team because a lot of the opportunities that team gets is an extension over to influencer. The second piece of advice I would give is to make sure that you are spending your dollars wisely. You don't always need these large influencer teams to be successful. Sometimes it's even about leveraging the existing teams that you have already working on the programs, and then finding an expert like Josh who understands the nuances in the landscape to really drive your strategy. So that's how we've been successful, and that is how I would advise clients to look at all of this.
Thank you both so much for these insights and for being here again. And to our audience, remember to keep in touch with your CMI Media Group or Centered lead. We will see you next time on The Nth Degree. Remember to like and subscribe.